Right, you might realise that we haven't had a reading yet. And I hope that my slides are going to come up at the back and at the front in a minute. But we're going to look at a family in the Bible, a family who... okay, well, you now know what the family is, don't you? We're going to look at this family, Abraham to Joseph. So that's quite a big stretch. But God made a promise to Abraham and Sarah that they would have a child and that he would be the father of great nations. So we're going to go through and look at how this worked itself out in practice. Now, if you think you've come from a dysfunctional family, you've not seen nothing yet. Now, those of you who know this story will know what some of the things I'm referring to. But this is Abraham, and he is mentioned in the Old Testament a lot and in the New Testament as a friend of God and a very special person. But these people were really, really flawed. So I'm hoping that somewhere you will get some hope if you're doubting yourself that God can't use you. He can. He used these people. So we're going to start with Abraham and Sarah and Ishmael. Now, most people start with Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac. But the fact that Ishmael is there is part of the conflict that evolves in this family. So God had promised Abraham and Sarah a son, that they would be a great nation, that through him all the nations of the world would be blessed. But they were waiting for ages. Sarah and Abraham were both very old. So Abraham made a suggestion which seems odd to us, but in those days was a lot more common. She said to Abraham, have a baby with my servant Hagar. And that's what happened. When she became pregnant with Ishmael, Sarah was miffed. And there was a lot of friction. So she ran away. While she was still pregnant, she ran away, and there she met an angel. The angel said to her, go home, have the baby, call him Ishmael. About 13 years after Ishmael was born, Sarah gave birth to Isaac. Now, there's a lot of laughing and disbelief going on in that period. They really didn't think they were going to have a baby. But as soon as Isaac was born, Sarah again was fed up with Hagar and Ishmael. I think while she didn't have a baby, she put up with Ishmael. But she didn't want him around when Isaac had been born. So she told Abraham to get rid of him. And it distressed Abraham. Ishmael was his son. But he did it. He sent Hagar and Ishmael into the desert with just a bag of food and a bottle of water. And that was it. She thought she was going to die. And she would have done if God hadn't intervened. God met with Hagar and told her that Ishmael would also be the father of a great nation, and showed her where the water was for them to survive. And that's what happened. As far as we know, they didn't meet together again until Abraham died. But God asked Abraham to do a very strange thing. This story bothers me almost more than any story in the Bible. God asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. And I struggle with it. But I trust God, so I'm just leaving it there. they think that Isaac was about teens to 20s at this time. He wasn't, we often see pictures of him as quite small, but he was, it seems to be that he was probably a little bit older. So how did he feel about it? He didn't seem to fight when Abraham put him on the altar. Did he trust God as much as Abraham did? I think possibly he did. And Abraham had told Isaac that God would provide a lamb. And he actually provided a ram. And you can see in the pictures there, finding the ram. And then... Oh, sorry, folks. Is that the right one? Oh, it's not. It's not moving on. Can you move it on for me, Andrew? There we are, sorry. I will try and make it work next time. I'll hold this in my hand, then I'll remember. I knew I'd forget to do something this morning. So, we are now going to have a reading. And Roy is going to read from Hebrews 8 to 12 and then 17 to 19. Thank you, Roy.
Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. He was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so, from this one man, and he as good as dead, became descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He who had embraced the promises was about to sacrifice his one and only son, even though God had said to him, "It's through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned." Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead. And so in a manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from death.
And that comes from the New Testament, where these people did things by faith. Their relationship with God was strong. They trusted him. Abraham trusted him even to sacrificing Isaac. No, that's the wrong way. Too far? That's it. So, after Sarah dies, Abraham wanted to find a wife for Isaac. And he sent his servant all the way back to where the extended family were. And he goes back and he asks God something very special. He said, when I get to the town, he said, if somebody comes out and offers to water my camels, then I reckon that's going to be the person that God wants me to take back. You want me to take back. So, now, watering camels was a big job because camels can drink a lot of water. So, you wouldn't just offer it casually, because it would take a while. But when the servant got there, that's what happened. Rebecca came to water her flocks, and she says, "Can I water your camels also?" And so the servant knew that this was going to be the one who would marry Isaac. She agrees to marry Isaac and travel back the next day. There's a lot of faith there, wasn't there, in this? and Isaac married her. Rebecca was probably younger than Isaac. They reckon Isaac was about 40 at this time, and she would have been young adult, that sort of age. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. There we go. I'm not sure. Yeah. So Rebecca found it difficult to conceive, and this seems to be a theme in the family. And she had to wait 20 years to have children, which is a long while. I don't know whether any of you had to wait that long to have children. I certainly didn't. I was very fortunate not to have that worry, but I know some people have. So when they were born, they were very different. So they were twins, Esau and Jacob. Esau was the oldest. He liked to hunt and was a bit of a manly man, or macho man, I suppose we'd have called it now. And Jacob liked to cook, so he was a bit of a mother's boy. And that's the way it panned out. Esau got on with his dad best. Jacob got on with his mum best. And at one stage, Esau came back from hunting, and he was really hungry. And Jacob had cooked a nice bowl of stew, and he sold his birthright, that's what he should get as the oldest child, from his father, for a bowl of stew. And when it came near time for Isaac to bless Esau with his final blessing, Jacob and Rebekah tricked Isaac into blessing Jacob instead. Now, the reason was how they could do that was that Isaac was old and blind, so he couldn't see very well. And Jacob said, "Oh, he'll know it's not me because I've got smooth arms, and and Esau's got hairy arms." So they put skins over his arms and things like that. And this was a real trick thing that Rebekah and Jacob played on Isaac, and it caused, as you can well imagine, a whole lot of trouble to the family. Ooh, maybe I wasn't pressing hard enough. Huh? So Jacob and Rachel. Jacob had to run away because Esau threatened to kill him, which in those sort of days was probably not that strange as what he's done. And the first night he ran away to go back to where Rebekah came from, and he had a dream. And in that dream, God renewed the vow he had made to Abraham to make Abraham's family a great nation. He renewed it with Jacob. So then Jacob takes on this mantle. He met Rachel at the well again. It seems to be a place that has happened. He fancied her and went back to Laban, who was Rebekah's sister, if I remember right, if I've got all my relationships right. And he asked Laban if he could marry her. And Laban said yes. You've got to work 7 years and then you can marry her. So he worked the 7 years, and when he went in to his bride, when he woke up in the morning and she took her veil off, it was Leah, Rachel's older sister, who wasn't nearly as good looking. We don't know why. Something about her eyes, I think there's some sort of idea about that. So Laban, who had tricked Esau and Isaac, is now tricked himself. And he says, I wanted to marry Rachel. He says, oh, well, you can marry Rachel. You can marry Rachel in about a week's time and work for another 7 years. So in total, he worked 14 years. He had Leah and he had Rachel. And Leah was the first one to have children. Rachel struggled again with having children. And when Leah had her first child, she said these words, surely my husband will love me now. I wonder what it was like for those years being married to someone you knew did not like them. It must have been really, really difficult. Now, Jacob had lots of children. Jacob had lots of children, 13 altogether, but Rachel found it hard to conceive. And Joseph and his other son to Rachel, Benjamin, were the last 2 children he had. But Jacob did very well working for Laban and became very rich, mainly by cheating Laban out of flocks and things. Joseph was Jacob's favourite because he was Rachel's son. More favouritism going on. He gave Joseph a special coat. Now, we've all heard of Joseph and his amazing coloured dream coat. They don't know that it was necessarily coloured. The Bible now translates it as ornate. It used to translate it as long-sleeved, so we don't really know. But it was posh. It wasn't a common old garden coat. He had lots of dreams which really annoyed his brothers and his parents to a certain extent. I always get the feeling that he was a bit precocious. I don't know why, it's just the way the Bible reads. He also told tales on his brothers to Jacob and saying that they weren't doing their jobs properly. And surprisingly enough, they weren't very keen on him. When Jacob sent Joseph to visit his brothers, more spying going on, or the brothers probably thought it, they were going to kill him, but instead they put him in a pit and sold him to slavery, which of course was all part of God's plan. So Joseph is sold into slavery, going on the way to Egypt. The brothers take the special coat, put blood on it from one of the animals in their flock, and take it back to Joseph and said, look what we found. We think Joseph must be dead. And Jacob was very distressed. And I thought, how could they possibly do that? Maybe they thought he would be more upset if they told him, we've sold him into slavery and he's on his way to Egypt. But it doesn't sound great, does it? Joseph was sold to somebody called Potiphar, and he worked for him, and he did a good job. He was a clever lad. And he was also a good-looking lad, because Potiphar's wife sort of fancied him and told lies about him to Potiphar because he wouldn't have a relationship with her. And because of that, he went to prison. I think Potiphar could have legitimately had him killed, but I think whether he thought his wife was lying, but he couldn't say much because marriages in those days were sort of bringing families together, and they think that Potiphar's wife was probably brought money into the family, and he didn't want to lose that, I suspect. So he was stuck in prison, and Pharaoh's butler and baker were in prison. Good job I got somebody waving to me. No, it's not going again, Andrew. Thank you. So where am I going? Yes. So the butler and the baker were sent to prison, and they had dreams. And so Joseph interpreted the dreams. I can never say that word, interpret the dream. I don't know. You know what I mean. The dreams, and the butler was put back into service with Pharaoh. Joseph did actually say to him, can you mention that I'm here and I didn't do anything wrong? But the butler forgot. Until Pharaoh had some very strange dreams that nobody could interpret. And then Joseph said, I know a guy. And Joseph was brought out of prison and he was able to interpret the dreams. Now, if you know these stories, you'll know there were cows, thin cows, fat cows, healthy corn, awful, rotty corn, and that God said that there would be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, why don't you get somebody really clever to save up all the corn in the harvest when there's lots of it, and then you can give it out to people afterwards. And Pharaoh said, I think you do. So that's how Pharaoh became head of the whole country in organising famine relief for a famine that nobody knew was coming. Thanks, Andrew. Now, the famine hit a wide range of the country, and Jacob and his sons were getting hungry. They were running out of grain. So he sent them to Egypt. When they came before Joseph, Joseph recognized them. However, he didn't say anything. But he did play a few tricks on them. I'm not going to go through them all. There was coins back in the corn when they go back. Then when they came back again, they took the money back, and then there was something about bringing Benjamin back and all this sort of thing. And it was tricky. But he wanted to know whether the brothers had changed their attitude. And eventually, when he said he was going to keep Benjamin in Egypt, one of the other brothers said, keep me instead. And that was when Joseph realized that they had changed. And so he revealed himself to them. And then Jacob and the whole family moved to Egypt and spent a comfortable time because they were Joseph's relations and everything was good. Now, after Jacob had died, his brothers were a little worried. They were worried because they thought that Jacob might want to take his revenge. He had the ability to do it, and that's what they wondered. But there's a verse in Genesis, which I think is going to come up on the screen for me to read. When this is what happened. His brothers then came to him and threw themselves down before him. We are your slaves, they said. But Joseph said to them, do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to do me harm, but God intended for it to be good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So part of God's plan. We're going to have another reading from Hebrews now, which Roy's going to read to us, just a couple of verses, which will come up on the screen.
By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau. He blessed each of Joseph's sons, and worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt and gave instructions concerning the burial of his bones.
They might have been not doing what God wanted all the time, but they did have a faith in God. So this is a story from Abraham to Joseph. There were some important bits I actually missed out. There was a time when Jacob wrestled with God and he limped evermore after that. And he had his name changed to Israel, which is where the Israel name comes from. But let's think of some of the takeaways from this passage. Lots of the women had trouble conceiving. This must have put a great strain on the relationships in the family. Fathering was interesting. A lot of favouritism was going on. And this sowed seeds of rivalness and bitterness in the family. The fathers had a relationship with God, which was the most important thing in their lives, and they passed it on to their children. We have not or ever will be perfect parents. Whether you've been a parent, whether you may someday be a parent. But the adults in this family were messed up often, but God had his hand on them all through this time. And so let's entrust our children into his hands. The things that happened in this story are key to God's salvation plan. All the nations of the world were going to be blessed through this family, because this was the family that Jesus was going to be born into years and years later. And that's how all the nations on the earth are blessed through this. Abraham trusted God. In Genesis 15:6 it says, Abraham believed the Lord and it was credited to him as righteousness. When we trust, believe, cling to and rely on Jesus, it is credited to us as righteousness. That is why we can come here to this table, break bread, drink juice, and thank him for all that he's done for us. It's not going again. Thank you. So Abraham was the father of a large family which grew to be a great nation. All the nations of the world would be blessed through Jesus. They had to wait. God was faithful in good times and bad times, but they had to trust him. And when they were in Egypt and in slavery, this was when they became a great nation. They went into Egypt, a large family. They came out of Egypt, a great nation. And that great nation went on to do all the things that carry on in the Bible. We too have been adopted into God's family of faith. Romans 8:15-17 says, the spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear. Again, rather, the spirit you have received has brought about your adoption to sonship, and by him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit testifies with our spirits that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God, and co-heirs with Christ. Isn't that absolutely amazing? So we don't need to fear, because our Heavenly Father is always with us. We may make mistakes and do things wrong, like they did in Abraham's family all the way through. But God is always with us. And we do have a good, good Father. And there's some words, we're going to sing this song to a video. There's some beautiful words in it. But I've heard the tender whispers of love in the dead of night. That line in this always moves me. And because you know that we what we need just before we even say a word. So we shouted Jesus over lots of things earlier, and we can trust him because he is our good, good Father. So we're going to sing that now.